Many people, when speaking of our society today, say that children are less safe than they have ever been before. Personally, I believe that no matter what year it is, we are always going to have horrible people running around on the streets. I think evil is just part of human nature. I don't know, maybe I read too many stories, but still, to all the parents out there, keep a close eye on your children. With all of that aside, this particular encounter happened about 20 years ago when I was 3. My brother was a newborn at the time, and for financial reasons, my mom, stepdad, my brother, and I all lived with my mother's parents. It was never a bad situation, but I think my mom grew frazzled quite easily trying to raise 2 young children and also save up enough money for a house of her own. That's why we spent most of our time at lakes and parks, any sort of free activity that would wear us out, I believe. Back then, my grandmother was in pretty good health, and I remember she drove my mom, my new brother, and me to a small lake in Denver for a fun weekend trip. I don't know why I remember all of this information so well. Again, I was only 3, but I was already dressed up in a pink bathing suit and was chatting about going swimming to my childhood teddy bear. That is, until my brother started to fuss, and I plugged my ears to drown out the noise. When we arrived at the lake, my grandma and my mom were visibly exhausted from the crying, and they quickly let me out of my car seat. They both told me to wait by the car while they fed my little brother, and I obeyed as they disappeared around the other side. I was just watching the waves on the lake and fiddling with my bear when 2 guys approached me from across the parking lot. Again, I don't know why I remember this so well, but the men were fairly young, maybe early 20s, and were dressed in baggy jeans and hoodies. I think they were both Caucasian as well, if that matters at all. I immediately got a stranger danger vibe from them, and I remember pressing myself up against my grandma's car, as though that would provide me some protection. I was a pretty cautious child anyways, but the instant terror I felt when these guys approached me caught me off guard. "Hey little girl," one of the guys said, leaning down so he was in my face. "Do you want $1?" I didn't say anything, and my limbs froze. I could not move even when the other man pulled out a $1 bill. The first man spoke again. "It's okay. If you get into our car, we'll give you $1. He started grabbing my arm, and I remember that I started to cry. However, I was so scared that I could not move or make a sound, so my tears were silent. "Don't cry, little girl. We'll give you $1, the man said, and he started to pull on my arm, dragging me towards a dirty, white van that scared me even more. The other man started to tell me that they were going to make me rich. He said I was going to earn more money than any other little girl would ever have, and I could then buy any toy I wanted if I just went into the van. When we were about halfway to the van, I dropped my teddy bear, and that's when I let out an audible scream. The men did not seem too concerned until my grandma came out from behind the car and charged the men. She was carrying a baby bottle from feeding my brother, and she used that to begin beating the men. After a few choice words that I have never heard or used before or since, the men let go of me. They ran into the van and sped off. After that, my grandma gave me my teddy bear back and carried me to my mom, where they calmed me down and called the police. After talking to me and wondering out loud how my grandma, a 72-year-old and a very tiny woman, beat up 2 young males. She even had some blood under her nails from scratching at them. My mom and grandma decided it was best to just go home and try the lake again another day. I don't know if the men were ever caught, but I sincerely hope so. Something tells me that whatever they wanted with the cute blonde 3-year-old girl was not good. My grandma does not remember this story. She has dementia now, but she will forever remain a hero of mine. My mom and I like to tell her this story though, because she is the bravest, kindest woman we know. Again, this was 20 years ago, but I would really implore any parents out there to make sure their kids are safe, and that fact is not going to change, even with time. This happened in 1998. I was 5 and my brother was 2. We just moved to a house in a village with our parents. My mom was pregnant with our little sister at the time, so she was just sitting and resting her legs in a chair, sunbathing, while me and my brother played around in the yard. It was late summer, and there were loads of flowers near the road, so I convinced my brother to come with me so we could pick up a bouquet and give it to Mom. He thought it was a great idea and happily ran out to the flowers and started picking the ones he liked best. I walked a few steps behind him and also picked out the flowers that I liked and started to assemble a bouquet when I heard a voice behind me. When I turned around, I looked up and saw a man with a big white beard, and he was smiling wildly towards me and my brother. I was raised to be polite towards people, so when he said hello, I answered with a hello back. Then I continued to assemble the flowers. The man then told me that he had been looking for me and my brother because his wife had told him to bring home 2 children just like us. Apparently, she had bought too much ice cream and didn't know what to do with it. I might have been raised to be polite, but I wasn't a naive child, and I was pretty cocky as well. So I just told him that he was lying and that he needed to get away from us because I knew there was something fishy about him. He then started to get more physical and was trying to usher me and my brother towards his bike. When he tried to lift up my brother, I stepped between them and strictly told him no. This is when my mom heard the commotion and stood up from her chair and yelled towards the man. She asked him what the hell he thought he was doing. He quickly turned to his bike and speeded away from there as quickly as he could. My mother then came down to us. My brother was crying, so she comforted him. Me? I was just pissed. Sure, I didn't trust him, but I didn't fully grasp what he was trying to do until a few years later. When I was around 10 or 11, a man was trying to take my ice cream at a gas station, but in a jokingly way, but I did think that something was off about him. My mother then came and pulled me away from him. When we were in the car, she asked me if I remembered the time that a man was trying to kidnap me and my brother. I told her that I did remember it. This is when she told me that was the same man that tried to do it. The man was known throughout the village as the harmless summer Santa because of the beard, and he liked to hang around the school and around children in general. So after that, I always told my friends to stay away from him. So yeah, Summer Santa, let's not meet again. I really don't want your ice cream. I was about 15 when I got my first real job in West New York, New Jersey. My mom had sent me to live with my sister, who was 13 years older than me, and she and I had recently gotten into a huge argument. So much that we didn't even speak for a week. Because of our argument, I ended up taking the bus to work that week. This place had a lot of people coming in and out, and I served coffee and pastries for the customers. I had just moved to New Jersey from Florida, and I've always been a relatively nice person and very friendly. Well, apparently, I left an impression on some man who hung around during the day to talk to me and just generally waited for me to get off. Again, I was 15, and he must have been in his 40s. I kept working, and as the hours passed, he would come and go, always checking in and seeing if I was almost done. I specifically remember him asking questions about when I was getting off, do I live close by, who was picking me up, but he seemed friendly enough, so I just kept small talk throughout the day. I really didn't want to be rude. Well, I had a relatively short shift since I was so young that when my time to clock out came, I tried to leave without making a big deal about it. This guy was keeping a close eye on me and starts following me out the establishment. He wants to accompany me to my bus. He wants to make sure I'm okay. He then starts grabbing me by the arm and telling me to come with him. He basically stalked me the entire day, and now was his chance to make his move. At this point, I'm getting pretty scared, and since this was back before I had a cell phone or texting was even invented, nor did I even have a beeper, I had no way of calling for help. I hadn't made it far from my job. I was still in their parking lot, and like a bat out of hell, my sister came speeding into the parking lot mad as hell. When she saw this guy pulling on me, she got even more mad. Of course, she yelled at me and said to get the fuck into the car, then proceeded to yell at the man who was very obviously trying to abduct me. He hauled ass, and when she got into the car, she started cursing at me. What the fuck were you doing with him, etc. I told her what happened, and she gave me the tightest hug, and we both started crying. Till this day, this is the part we both couldn't understand, but she told me that she was coming home from work that day. She had a nagging sensation to go pick me up from work. She didn't know I was working, but she had the sensation that she needed to go pick me up. I worked a good 20 to 30 minutes away from our home. She proceeded to ignore this persistence. She parked, got into the elevator, and as the doors closed, something inside of her rang, and all the alarms went off and she listened. She got into her car, mad as hell that she was listening to whatever gut feelings, or intuition, or guardian angel that was alarming her. She didn't know I was working, but sure enough, she got there just in time. She has never experienced something like that since or before. I really don't know what to make of all that. All I do know is she saved me. I quit that job shortly thereafter, and she never allowed me to ride the bus there again or leave work alone. Okay, so this happened in Maine when I was about 3 years old. I was at the beach with my mom. We went as a group with some other stay-at-home moms and their kids. It was a fairly hot and crowded day there, and I found myself playing with other kids at the edge of the water. For some reason, I strayed away a bit, and that's when a middle-aged woman started talking to me. I remember her very clearly. She looked like a mother would, with a one-piece black bathing suit, cargo shorts, sunglasses, and her hair pulled up in a bun. She asked me what games I liked to play and what my favorite candy was. As soon as I told her, she told me she had some in her car and persuaded me to come with her. Yeah, I know. I was quite the naive child. She was cheerful and enthusiastic, taking my hand and leading me away through the crowded beach. I skipped alongside her and had no fear whatsoever. Then, thank my lucky stars, my mom spotted me from a distance and started screaming my name at the top of her lungs and jumping up and down while waving her arms. The woman immediately let go of my hand and darted away. I just stood there, terribly confused, until my mom got to me. I get chills thinking about it now. She seemed so nice at the time, though I admit I was too trusting. It stinks of an attempted kidnapping now. If my mom hadn't spotted me, who knows where I'd be, or if I'd even be alive. I was 13 years old at the time. I'm now 22, and I was on vacation with my parents in Turkey. We were in an all-inclusive hotel and enjoying the holiday. The hotel was full of tourists from different countries. There was this one guy, around 20, who was staring at me for some time. I felt really uncomfortable and asked him how he was doing. That was a wrong choice. The next few days, everywhere I went, he also suddenly appeared. Not flirting, just lurking for hours and watching me. He had a really strange vibe around him, and I felt I shouldn't be alone with him. Now, I was still young, so my parents didn't want to leave me alone in a foreign country. So, he could not bother me. But one night, there was entertainment in the hotel, which became boring to me after some time. I told my parents I wanted to go to my own hotel room, and I would see them in the morning. I left and walked to the elevator. What I didn't know was that the guy who was watching me for days saw me leaving and he had followed me. When I saw him also coming in, I was in great fear. He looked at me silently with a sinister smile. This is it, I thought. Rape, assault, or maybe even worse. Just before the doors of the elevator were closing, someone stuck his boot between it in order to prevent the doors from closing. I am not kidding. All I could see was a boot. The doors opened, and thankfully, it was my dad. He saw that the creepy guy was leaving at the exact same time I had left, and he just didn't trust it. He looked the guy in the eye and said hello. My dad took me to my hotel room. To this day, I'm so glad for the rescue because I really don't know what would have happened if he didn't.